Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I will talk to you about why I won't be teaching English in Japan anymore. Teaching English in Japan is often promoted as the best or easiest way to get into the country if you're not an exchange student, but it's not necessarily the best choice for your career or well-being, I think. However much you love Japan and are dedicated to stay here, you will spend most of your time in the office or being a teacher. So you better enjoy that if you decide on doing that. So I have experience teaching English when I was studying Japanese. I wanted to find a part-time job, and English teaching jobs are still the best paid among part-time jobs. So I chose to do that. I also had experience training colleagues at my previous job in Belgium, and I enjoyed that, so I wanted to polish that skill in Japan teaching English. However, there were a few reasons for me from the start not to continue teaching and eventually also not to consider teaching English again. So here's the first one: the English teacher stamp. So what I mean by that is that I knew, having experience working in marketing, communications, moving to Japan, and deciding to become an English teacher, that I was actually taking a little bit of a turn in my career. And honestly, I was worried about that because I thought that if being an English teacher will be my first work experience in Japan, it might be hard to find other jobs for me in the future. So this was a worry that I had from the start, and it actually got confirmed by other people around me, friends around me who, they came into Japan, they moved to Japan, their work is sponsored by an English school or by a public school or because of the JET program, I don't know. And they end up teaching English for 3 years, those first years that you're trying to settle into the country. You don't want to worry too much about your job, so you just choose to teach English, I don't know. So you end up teaching 3 years or 5 years and 10 years. And all of a sudden you realize that when you kind of want something new in your career, that it's hard to get out of it because you have that English teacher stamp. So if you're someone who wants to keep on teaching English for the rest of their lives, then that's perfectly fine. But if you kind of know in the back of your head that teaching English is not what you want to be doing for the rest of your life, keep that in mind, I think, from the start, and be prepared to put in the work to, correct yourself or get yourself back on the track where you want to be. Second reason why I would not want to continue teaching English in Japan anymore is that the money is not that good anymore. From a personal experience, so if you're going to be teaching for the first time, you will have to prepare for your classes, obviously. Even though I had some experience training colleagues at my previous job in Belgium, I did not really have any experience creating classes, like actual English classes or any type of classes, really. So I do remember for my first teaching job that, 10 minutes of preparation time will not do the job, at least not the first month or 2-3 months, I think. So I ended up spending quite some time in the beginning preparing my classes. So remember that when you see a job ad to teach English, that will not include your time to prepare for the class, especially if you're someone who would like to continue, always put in a lot of effort into your classes. Be aware of that. I realized that I was losing money preparing all of these classes, so I eventually had to find a way to make it worth my time. So I recommend that you do the same. You try to find a way where you don't spend hours preparing for your classes. Especially, I heard, at public schools, the pay is not that great when you count in all the hours that you need to prepare for the classes and the hours that you need to get together with other teachers, meetings and so on. I mean, I have no experience working at a public school, only private school, so I'm not 100% sure how it's done over there, but you won't get paid for that. And then another reason why, the money is not that good is that you won't get paid for your time going into the office. Some teaching jobs offer, compensation for the transportation costs, but still your time won't be compensated. And often you will do a job part-time, so and it's not always close by, so you have to go into the office and it just becomes an hour a day very quickly. And if you only teach like 2 or 3 hours a day, then that's kind of, is it worth your time? You have to consider that. So, yeah. And something else that I heard is that in the past, like, it was pretty easy to get your visa sponsored and the money was really good. But I feel like if I look at the, pay right now for jobs in Kyoto, at least, it's not that great. I mean, it's still, as I said before, among the best paid when you're looking for a part-time job, but I don't, considering all the other cons, I don't think it's that good, the money. So teaching English in Japan will not really help you improve your Japanese language skill. Again, from a personal experience, I was teaching at a private Eikaiwa, or English conversation school for adults. And so you will be surrounded by other people or English teachers, and everyone will speak English. And the students as well, they're practicing their English. So you will be basically speaking English all the time. And comparing that to my current experience working in a Japanese-speaking environment, my Japanese has just improved so much compared to my time being an English teacher. So keep that in mind if it's important for you to improve your Japanese language skill. And I think if you're serious about living in Japan, then you should take that serious, or take that into account, that your Japanese won't improve as much. I mean, it came even to a point where I was like, okay, I'm teaching English and the money is pretty good for me, to survive part-time. But my Japanese was not improving as much as I wanted to. So I was considering quitting teaching English altogether and just work at a bar or a restaurant so I would, use my Japanese a little bit more. So think about that. And think about the consequences if your Japanese won't improve. If you can't speak any Japanese, you won't be able to make friends outside of work as much, and so you have a risk of isolation. You'll get stuck into this circle of people who only speak English, or outside of work, it'll be hard to settle in. So that's pretty important, I think, but it all depends on what you want, of course. So, but another reason why I wouldn't recommend teaching English in Japan, or I wouldn't do it anymore, is because the profession is shrinking in general. I mean, there's a lot of online tools for people to use to learn English. There's AI tools as well now. Times have changed. Definitely the past 2-3 years of the pandemic, people are trying to find different ways to learn English without having in-person classes. Online classes is still something you could do, but be aware of the fact that people find other ways to teach English, or learn English, if they're really serious about it. And people who are serious about it will find ways to learn English. Teaching part-time, you don't have as much rights as being full-time or having a full-time position in any type of job. So be prepared if you're teaching part-time, which a lot of people do. if you're working part-time, be prepared for the fact that they can, get rid of you fairly easily and quickly. A few of my friends recently had this incident at a school where I used to work as well. So most of the teachers there, they work part-time. I'm not sure about finding a full-time teaching position in Japan, if it's that easy, or in Kyoto at least, but most of my friends, they will be teaching part-time at different schools. And so the school where I used to teach at, I made some friends there, and just about a month ago or something, they got like a message saying like, okay, this was on payday, saying, you're all fired and the school is closing like tomorrow. You have to come and pick up your stuff, leave, and we're very sorry, but you won't be paid for the past month. So people had been working for about a month. They were fired effective immediately. They were not getting paid for the past month. They weren't getting any severance money because they're part-time workers. It was just a very nasty situation. And you could say like, oh, why would you be working part-time at different schools? And I mean, it's just for some people who are married to a Japanese national, they have a spouse visa. For them, it's not really necessary to apply for a full-time job or position at a school. Or it's just hard to find a full-time position anywhere. So it's, it's just not that easy. And if you have a family and you have a lot of part-time jobs and all of a sudden you lose, let's say 50% of that, and without any notice, without any pay, then, I mean, that can be very stressful. So I'm not saying this is always the case, but it happens. It's not rare. So be aware of that when you start teaching English. One of the last reasons why I wouldn't recommend teaching English in Japan, or why I won't be doing it anymore, is because it can be frustrating because of the lack of progress. From a personal experience, again, I noticed that, especially in private schools where adults, sign up to learn English, students go in thinking their English will improve just by attending classes and by listening to the teacher. But what a lot of students don't understand is that teachers will give you the tools and give you advice on how to learn English. But when you go home, you have to do the work to some extent. And even though a lot of students were asking me about that, like, what is the best way for me to learn English outside of school, I felt like a lot of them would still not do it. And I would be teaching the same things over and over again, or I wouldn't notice any progress, which can be frustrating if you care about that. There's other students who go into these classes doing this for their jobs because their managers told them to take classes outside of their work because they need to use English at work, but they don't really need to use English at work. They just need to read emails or be able to write emails, but they still can't really, put together a proper sentence or something. So or there's other students who just go in there and they want to kill some time. It's sad to say this, but like, some retired people sometimes go into these classes and they do it for fun, which is totally fine. But they sometimes, I think, enjoy more the social setting or the social interaction than really, they don't really care that much about improving their English. So again, that can be frustrating as a teacher. So be aware of that. According to Education First, Japan scores, 78th in English proficiency out of 112 countries. And they're running behind other neighboring countries like Taiwan or China or South Korea. And, in this current day and age, I sometimes wonder what Japan is planning to do about this. They recently changed some things in education where children will be learning English from elementary age or elementary school age, which, I could be happy about that, but honestly, if you've been learning English for like 12 years, let's say from high school up until you graduate college or university, and you still can't speak English, I don't know if it'll get better just by, forcing children to learn English at an earlier age. I think there's a fundamental issue with how English is being taught in Japan and how people perceive a foreign language like English. And I don't know, this thing where they don't really need English in their daily lives. I feel like media and everything in daily life in Japan is so adapted to only Japanese speaking people that people don't really have a lot of reasons to learn other languages. But as I said before, in a world that is changing as much as it is right now, and with countries or neighboring countries like Taiwan, China, and South Korea really stepping up their game, I really wonder how Japan is going to, partake in this change and in this, opening its doors to the foreign world and foreigners as well. Like, Japan needs people to work here, and I feel like there's just so little effort for, foreigners to come in here, make it work, and for Japanese to make it work outside of Japan. These are just one of the few things that I had in mind, and I hope this can be helpful for you to consider your first step in Japan or your next step in Japan. Either way, I think you should not underestimate your own skills, and don't assume that your only option in Japan is teaching English. It's going to be a bit of a struggle maybe to find what you want to do in Japan, but if you have a certain degree or you have a certain experience in a different country or in your home country, you can find something with that. You will have to look a little bit and talk to people a little bit. So, all right, that's it. Hope you learned something from it. See you next time.